Hiya! Whisper back from raid testing. This will be a short video, just trying to make it short. Logs are screwed, so nothing I can do about that. But I do want to talk about it a little bit and go over some of the damage, because as you can probably see from the details already, it's pretty crazy. So as an addendum to yesterday's video where I talked about the buffs, the tier set is now affected by Mastery and Shiv, which means that this is doing a lot of damage. It's a really good 4 set now. The 50% buff that you saw in the patch notes yesterday end up being roughly 300 to 350% of an increase. Really impressive stuff. On top of that, you can see here, this is Laradar. We played Caustic Spatter on this, 10% of my damage from Caustic Spatter. Very good stuff. If I just sort by enemy damage taken, you can see I am keeping up pretty well in single target on the boss, but I'm also doing pretty respectable damage to the adds on that fight. So I really like how this is shaping up. There are a little bit of oddities happening, and I think the spec in general is still a little bit weak. Shout out Toby for the whisper, by the way. But in general, I'm really happy with how this is shaping up. I think Rupture is still a little bit too weak. I'd like to see some Rupture buffs. Music's a little bit loud. I'd like to see some Rupture buffs, but in general, I can't complain about any of this. This is looking really, really strong. And the burst is crazy as well. On a lot of these fights that have adds, if you can line up your Kingsbane with your Caustic Spatter, and the adds are getting hit by Caustic Spatter, you're going to be doing a ton of damage. The burst is incredible with Kingsbane. On Nimue, we didn't get very far on a lot of these. I also died on a couple of these fights, testing out some things. But Nimue is completely single target. You swap to the Cycle Warden on the intermission, but even then you see Kingsbane. You have a Kingsbane for every intermission on Nimue. So this is big add damage on the Cycle Wardens. You can see the Cycle Warden damage. I'm top on an add, right? On an add in the middle of the fight. Assassinations, top 3. Really good stuff there. And in boss damage, I'm also keeping up. I will admit I'm not playing this perfectly. The opener is still not in my fingers entirely. So there is some improvements to be had. I'm also not completely optimized gear-wise, right? I'm just running Ashes and the new tier set, and that's it. I don't have embellishments recrafted or Call to Suffering or any of that. This is just my gear on live with the new tier set. So there's definitely improvements to be had, right? So looking at that, internal bleeding's looking okay. The other thing to note, right now on PTR, as this video comes out and for testing, you cannot play Blindside, and I will show you why really quickly. But while I'm showing you this, I'll explain. Blindside now has the quality of life change that causes you to replace Mutilate with Ambush, right? So you see my Mutilate just turned into Ambush because I have a Blindside proc. If I use an Ambush right now, you'll see that this Ambush did 11,000 physical damage, and there's no drop-down menu. So here on the Mutilate, you can see Vicious Venoms proccing, right? So you see the main hand hit and then Vicious Venoms. If I do that again here, you can see more Vicious Venoms, right? Mutilate hits, Vicious Venoms. But if I do that with Dance, you see it drops down on Ambush. But outside of Dance, there's another Ambush here, not related to the first one. And this one right here, this is the Blindside Ambush. It is currently using the wrong version of Ambush. So instead of the good version of Ambush, which you get from Stealth, you can actually hover over this. It's 8676 on the spell ID. If you get a Blindside proc, there's a container, which is like spell ID 400,000 or something. Let me pull it up real quick. Come on. So here's the container. So this is 430,023. They did that to contain an ambush within it. So Mutilate gets replaced by this container, this box, and the box holds an ambush cast. But the ambush cast that it's holding is not the ambush cast 8676. It's a different ambush from Legion that has all sorts of random numbers and doesn't interact with anything. So during all of this testing, I wasn't even running Blindside because it would have crushed my damage. So I was running weird stuff, Tiny Toxic Blade. I was running Twist the Knife to try and game into the tier set more, which I think might actually be pretty good, by the way. Twist the Knife might actually be on the menu. But it's looking really good. It's looking really good. I'm liking how it's shaping up. The spec is a little bit slower now with the 7 on Venomous Wounds. In Bis Gear with Blindside, the actions per minute are looking to be around 52 to 54. It's a little bit on the slower side from what a lot of people were saying. Like, they wanted it around 55. But 55 is kind of what it is on live, so it's a little bit slower than the live version, but not by much. And honestly, I think it really helps. Sanguine is still not played in single target, but with how strong the tier set is, I think that there's an opportunity to cause pooling through Twist the Knife and other effects that could help us pool that way. So you'd pool into a Shiv really heavily, you try to chain Envenoms together. So I think if you're into the pooling gameplay in general, a lot of this tier bonus and Twist the Knife and kind of Envenom timing that is coming up with the slower speed really plays into that. And I was seeing success with that during Raid today. If you're not into pooling, I think Twist the Knife is still fine for you. Envenom's duration is still really long. The other thing I need to mention is just a real quick opener that I'm going to do. As some of you might know, we have accelerated openers that are sort of like being talked about. What do I mean? In general, if I were to do as just a normal single target opener, I'd go here, and then I'd get a Rupture up, and then I'd get Envenom up, and then I would go into my cooldowns. So in total, that's like the 25-second piano opener that everyone keeps talking about, right? But on some of these fights, that's too slow. You simply need to be faster than that. So right now, on Laradar, we had ads that spawned very early, and the best way to handle those ads was low combo point finishers the entire way through, because you still need Rupture in order to get Caustic Spatter up, right? You can't get Caustic Spatter up without Rupture, which means we had to use a low combo point Rupture, and then we had to maintain Envenom somehow. So that ended up looking something like this, where you get the Rupture, and then you get a low combo point Envenom. You'd go into your cooldowns here, and then you'd get up your Caustic, and then here you would just snapshot all of your effects, and now you're rolling, right? Now you're able to maintain it. So in this case, you're doing fine. And you can see the damage is going good, and Caustic Spatter's doing a ton of damage to these ads here, right? Ton of damage. So it's a little bit weird, a little bit of a different play style, having to sort of spin the plates, but they're all really low duration. It causes a lot of friction in the opener, but I think it's kind of fun, actually. I'd rather low combo point finishers than like high combo point finishers, and then having to refresh them again at high combo points. It's very weird. But snapshotting through Shadow Dance is still a thing, and this sort of low combo point opener playstyle I think is kind of fine. The other way to accelerate it, if you aren't playing Caustic Spatter, like let's say you're playing pure single target like this, where you are rolling with Internal Bleeding instead, you have the same concept where you skip Rupture though. So here you would get up a full Envenom, and then you would go into your cooldowns, right? You'd go in, and then here you would get your Rupture up, right? And then you would maintain your Envenom that way. Same concept, but you can take it a little bit easier because you don't have to juggle the Rupture alongside the Envenom. You can just kind of wait for your Rupture and get it up afterwards and really focus on Envenom during your Kingsbane. So those are kind of the two ideas going on right now for an accelerated opener and the findings from raid testing and all that. And we're just under 10 minutes. Hopefully that was all the questions. Next up, over the weekend, I'm finishing up Dungeon Slice implementation in Sims. And then we're going to crank out some videos next week, hopefully. I also have to update guides. Guides on Wowhead and Method are due soon, just as a turn-in. Gonna wait for this fire truck to pass. So guides are due soon on Wowhead and Method, which means I need to do a lot of writing for those. But I will try to crank out videos. Stuff I have planned currently is prepping for the next patch, going over some rotational changes and opener stuff that is happening with 10.2, talking about gearing, which is probably going to get put into the prep video, I would assume. And then we're going to talk about some more advanced stuff, pooling, how things synergize, a little bit of math behind it maybe, all that kind of stuff. Advanced techniques, basically. So basics video on gameplay, advanced one, how to prep, all that kind of stuff. How to think about your cooldowns, etc., etc. And hopefully that content, I can crank that out really fast, but I do only have 24 hours in a day, and there's a lot of stuff happening, and I will be at BlizzCon. So it's crunch week next week. And if some of the stuff is a little bit rushed, I'm sorry, I'm trying, okay? Anyways, have a good day. Baya, stuff is really fun, but the raid fights suck. I don't like the raid fights. But the spec is so lit though. Baya,